Our last topic is free will. So I'm going to talk about the three kind of important terms in the free will debate, and then we're going to talk about the chart on the right. So first, three important terms. So we start with the idea of free will itself. So what is the question that we're going to be talking about? What is the topic that we're going to be looking at? So uh, broadly, the way philosophers often think about free will is that it's the sort of thing that you need to be acting with or acting from in order for us to hold you morally responsible. So what do I mean by that? So imagine that I'm I sort of hit you with my fist. Typically, we would think I've done something wrong and we would hold me morally responsible for it. So you would expect me to, at the very least, apologize, maybe go to jail, something like this. But imagine, for instance, that somebody grabbed my arm uh, and pushed my arm into you so that I hit you with my fist, even though I wasn't trying to do that at all. In that case, we would not expect me to apologize. We would not send me to jail. We'd expect the person who grabbed my arm to apologize. The person who grabbed my arm should go to jail. So, what's the difference between these two cases? Well, it looks like in the first case, I acted of my own free will. I did this on purpose to hit you with my fist. And in the second case, there was no free will there. The other person was sort of controlling my body. I had no control over this. And so the thought is that, look, free will is the missing ingredient in the second case. It's the ingredient that's present in the first case. And this explains why we hold me morally responsible. And so the thought is whatever free will is, it's the sort of thing that makes you responsible for your actions. What else is free will? I don't know. Maybe there's other stuff too. So maybe free will is related to whether your life is meaningful, or maybe free will is related to uh, how you control your body, like whether or not you're responsible for it. But like the since it seems to be one of the most important issues, philosophers often think about free will largely in terms of moral responsibility, just because this is an easy thing to look at when we're thinking about free will. And also because it's like very important, like, we send people to jail or we execute them for things that they've done. Whereas if they don't have any free will, you might think, well, this is very unfair for us to be mistreating people for things that they have no moral responsibility for. So this is why a lot of what we're going to read about in the free will debate is going to relate to moral responsibility. And so that's why the first term is related to the second term up there. And now the third term, causal determinism. So when we're talking about free will, one of the main debates, and the debate that we're going to spend the most time on, maybe even all the time, I think, yeah, we're going to basically spend all our time on the debate over whether free will is compatible with causal determinism. And so what does that mean? So causal determinism is the thesis that everything that happens in our universe, at least, is determined by it's determined by two things, or a conjunction of two categories. It's determined by the laws of physics and the initial conditions of the universe. So like the Big Bang or whatever. And so what you're supposed to imagine is that, look, the laws of physics govern how particles move, and they govern how, everything in the universe relates to each other. Basically, the laws of physics determine what happens. And the laws of physics just say, look, in certain conditions, certain things will happen, like, particles will attract each other based on mass and blah, blah, blah. And so the laws of physics don't tell you what's going to happen unless you also add in like the beginning state. And then once you have the beginning state, everything just occurs according to the laws of physics. So I don't know, the Big Bang, the universe comes into existence, and then you have all these particles. And then from then on, they're just sort of bouncing around according to what the laws of physics say. And a lot of people look at this and they say, well, look, the laws of physics determine how everything happens, how every particle behaves. And that includes all the particles in my fist, all the particles in my body, all the particles in my brain, everything. It determines everything. And so if the world is sort of causally determined in the sense that the laws of physics and the initial conditions determine everything that's going to happen, that leaves no room for us, basically. And specifically, that leaves no room for free will. It leaves no room for you to make any decisions about what's going on. So it might feel as if I decided to punch you, but really I didn't decide anything. It was just determined by the laws of physics that I would punch you. And so that's the worry, that causal determinism is incompatible with free will. You can't have free will if everything's just determined by the laws of physics plus the initial conditions of the universe. Why should I be responsible for something that was going to happen because of how particles were arranged back at the Big Bang, trillions and trillions of years ago? That would be strange for me to be responsible for something I only did because the laws of physics and the Big Bang resulted in me doing it. So that's the puzzle, and that's what we're going to talk about. And so here on the right, we have a flow chart which basically sets out the sort of positions that you can take. So we have our central question, which is free will compatible with determinism? Can you have causal determinism and free will? And so if we go down the left and we say no, we call this sort of incompatibilism. Why? Well, because it says free will is not compatible with determinism. You can't have both. And then incompatibilism has two kind of flavors, two possible options. You could say free will is incompatible with determinism, and so determinism has to go. Free will is what we have, and so determinism, causal determinism, is false. And so one name for that is libertarianism, and it has this name because it basically means like, look, we're free in a sense. We're free from the laws of physics. They do not completely control our behavior. There's a sort of liberty that we have which exists beyond or above or outside of causal determinism, outside of the laws of physics. So if we're free in these ways, then causal determinism is false. The laws of physics don't determine everything that happens. Maybe they determine most things that happen, but they don't determine some things. Some things are up to us. So that's one incompatibilist option. The other incompatibilist option is hard determinism. Hard determinism says free will is not compatible with determinism, but determinism is true. And so free will is false. Nobody has any free will. If you look back at the when we were voting on topics, the proposed reading for this included an article by Strawson called The Impossibility of Moral Responsibility or something. Strawson is a hard determinist. I took Strawson off the readings and I just put in some other stuff because I taught the same paper last year in an intro class, and I don't know, people didn't like it very much. But if you're really interested in hard determinism, let me go. I can sort of swap in Strawson for one of the readings. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I only have one data point for the Strawson article in that class. Didn't like it very much, but maybe this class will like it a lot. So if you're interested in hard determinism, let me know. Those are the two incompatibilist options. We move to the right and we go back to the original question, is free will compatible with determinism? You could say yes, they are compatible with each other. And the name for this is just compatibilism. And you can figure out yourself why it's named compatibilism. And so these are people who say, look, causal determinism is true. Everything's sort of determined by the laws of physics plus the Big Bang. But nevertheless, we have free will. And so basically, those are the three kind of positions on free will. And we'll talk about them as we read the various articles.